Hi, and welcome to the third video for Chapter 9. We had created our root view controller and populated it with font families in the last video. Now we're going to add another view, which you get when you select one of those font families. So let's get started. So let's first create the class. So going back to the file navigator, we're going to add a new CocoaTouch class, which is going to implement a UI table view controller, and we're going to call it font list view controller, and it'll list all the fonts within a given family. We're going to subclass UI table view controller, and we're going to need some properties and some data source methods. Modification to view did load, modification to or code for view will appear, the font for display method, and we'll also add a function in the root view controller called prepare for segue that will run when we make the transition to this view. So let's get some code here from the book source code. We'll get it from the font list view controller. Like I said, we're gonna we'll need some properties. We'll have a particular kind of a cell for this table view, which his identifier is going to be font name. We're going to have the font size, which will be a float. We're going to keep track of whether we're showing the favorites or whether we're showing a list of fonts from a particular family, and we'll have the font names for this particular family. It's going to be an array of strings, and we'll initialize it empty. Okay. Let's grab the code for view did load. I'm going to comment out the business here. Well, actually, no, I'm going to leave it in. If we're showing favorite, I may have to comment this out to make it work, because I'm not going to really focus on the favorites until sort of the end of the chapter. But here we're setting up the preferred font for using in this table view, and again we're picking it from the UI font class, just like we did in the other in the root view controller. We'll need the view will appear function. This function again runs just before this view is shown, because the navigation controller moves us back and forth between views, and all we want to do here is if we're showing the favorites, then we'll want to grab the list of font names from the favorites list and reload the table view. Otherwise, table view will be okay. We won't need to reload it. Then we need our data source methods. Again, let's comment out everything. Let's just delete the built-in stuff from here on out. And I'll grab the data source stuff. And number of rows in this section are however many are in the font names. The cell for row at index path is going to display, based on the stuff we put in the prototype cell, the appropriate info for the font reviewing. We've got a function that'll tell whether or not a row is editable or not, and we're going to return whether or not it'll be editable if we're showing the favorites. And editing style, again, will get used later on. And I need to get the font for display function, which, like in the root view, turns a name into a font. And I need a function called prepare. I don't need that yet. I need the prepare function out of the root view controller. And let's go back to the root view controller here. And this is a function, this prepare function will run when we do a segue. We haven't talked about segues yet. Segues are the transitions between scenes. By segue, I mean the word S-E-G-U-E, not S-E-G-W-A-Y like the scooters. It's a movie industry word. Well, it's older than that, but it is used in the movie industries to mean a transition between scenes. Everything, each one of these sort of frames in the navigation, in the storyboard, is called a scene. So when we're going from this scene to the next scene, which I still have to create, I'll go ahead and add one while I'm in here. It's going to be a table view controller. And there's another scene. These arrows with buttons or whatever they are on them designate the transitions. Since I've gone ahead and put this in here, let me go ahead and do a couple things to it now. I forgot to change the class before, so I'll be sure to change the class now. And I'm going to go ahead and put that segue in here. And I'm going to put a segue from the first kind of a cell into the second scene. So I'm going to select that cell, control drag into the other scene, and now I get a bunch of different kinds of segues to pick. This is going to be a selection segue, and that is when I select the thing that I started from, the cell, I want it to show the destination view controller. You notice I get the back arrow up here, and I get my arrow here indicating that the segue is there. Now let's go back and look at the prepare function. There's only one segue here, and you only get one prepare function. So if you've only got one kind of segue, your prepare function only has to deal with that. Now we're ultimately going to have two kinds. And you can see it depends on which section of the index path we were in. Until we implement the favorites, I'm going to comment out all the rest of this stuff so that we're just dealing with that one kind of segue at this point. So again, we're in the root view controller, and this specifies what the font family name we're going to show is in that font list view controller we're creating. We're not quite done in the storyboard. Let's go back to it. I have to set up a prototype cell for this view controller, and the reuse identifier is font name for this. I happen to remember that it's defined as one of the properties in the font list view controller. Style we're going to use is subtitle. The accessory will be the detailed disclosure. It's a little I. And we've already added our segue from the font name cells of the root view controller. We don't have a segue yet from favorites. We're going to go back and add in all the favorite stuff in a later video. But let's give this a run. And now we should be able to see how the navigation controller works. And let us go to the font family display from the root view. So I pick American Typewriter. It crashes. So I've done something wrong with classes or transitions. Let's see if the error message tells me anything useful. It looks like unable to dequeue a cell with identifier. Font name must register a neighbor class for the identifier or connect a prototype cell in the storyboard. So something having to do with that font name identifier I used. Well, let's go back and look at our code for the font list view controller. And we've specified a cell identifier here. And in the method, we're using the cell identifier font name. Let's make sure I didn't misspell something somewhere. Capital F, capital N. Go back to the storyboard. Select the cell. Font name is the identifier. So that should be okay. Not seeing my error. Let me stop this video. I'll fix it and then we'll continue in the next video.